In the silent wilderness of space, far beyond the warm comfort of Earth, far beyond the familiar glow of our moon, there lies a darkness so wide and calm that even time feels slower inside it. A darkness so quiet that every distant star seems to shimmer, like a thought drifting in a sleeping mind. Out here, there is no wind, no sound, no rising or falling of waves, only the endless stillness of the cosmic ocean. And in that stillness, as your eyes adjust to the soft black of infinity, a pale curve begins to appear. At first, it is almost nothing. A faint line of light, barely brighter than the darkness around it. But slowly, patiently, as if the universe is revealing it one breath at a time, the shape becomes clearer, a soft golden glow, gently edged in shadow, growing larger, as if rising through a horizon made of stars. This is Saturn, the pale giant of the outer solar system, a world so distant that the sunlight reaching it is faded, softened, like a memory of warmth, rather than warmth itself. Saturn does not blaze. It does not radiate with the intensity of Jupiter or the familiar blue brilliance of Earth. Instead, it glows quietly, like a candle seen through fog, like a lantern half dimmed by sleep. As you drift closer, something delicate begins to emerge around it, a thin, gleaming ribbon, stretching across the dark, so gentle that it looks almost unreal. The rings, they appear first, as faint strokes of pale light, barely touching the edges of your vision. But with every moment, every slow inch of your drifting, they grow sharper, wider, more intricate, and then, suddenly, they are unmistakable. A breathtaking halo of frozen brilliance. Thin as paper, light as mist, quiet as a held breath. Billions of icy fragments, each no larger than a grain of sand, or as grand as a mountain cliff, all circling in perfect order around a planet that has been sleeping for billions of years. It is beautiful in a way that does not demand your attention, but invites it gently, like a hand guiding you into a softer state of mind. The rings catch the weak sunlight and scatter it into shimmering tones of silver and gold, as if the universe painted this world with the finest brush it had. They look unreal, too thin, too delicate, too perfect. Yet they are real, and they have been here long before the first humans ever looked up at the night sky and wondered. The camera of your imagination continues drifting, slowly, smoothly, as if gliding on the softest of cosmic tides. You move closer to Saturn, and the darkness around you deepens into stillness. A stillness so absolute that it feels like a kind of peace, the kind you only feel when the world around you finally quiets and your breath softens into a steady rhythm. Saturn grows larger in the frame, filling the darkness with its gentle, muted glow. It is not sharp, not harsh, not overwhelming. It is, instead, soft, subtle, a giant wrapped in whispers. The pale yellow clouds of its upper atmosphere curl around one another, like slow-moving brushstrokes, trapped in eternal calm. From this distance, it looks like a world carved from cream and gold, its surface a tapestry of delicate textures that drift and swirl without hurry. You drift closer still, and as the rings widen across your view, fanning out like a frozen river of light, a quiet thought begins to form in your mind, a thought shaped not by sound, but by feeling. You are drifting closer to a giant made of silence. The words settle into the air, soft and slow, like gentle ripples on a still lake, and they feel true. Saturn is a giant made of silence, a world that speaks through its calmness, a world that breathes in slow, steady rotations, a world that does not roar or rage or burn, but instead waits, sleeps, endures. The rings draw your gaze again, their thin arcs sweeping around the planet with impossible grace. They are not loud, they do not glitter with the sharp brilliance of diamonds. Instead, they shimmer softly, like frost catching the first light of dawn. Each ring is made of countless pieces of ice and rock, remnants of a moon that shattered millions of years ago, or perhaps the fragments of something that never fully formed. But here, under the gentle glow of distant sunlight, they come together as one perfect structure, a structure so thin that if you could hold it in your hand, it might feel lighter than breath. The camera glides past the outer edge of the rings, moving through drifting particles that glitter like snow in the dark. Each piece reflects light in its own quiet way, creating a curtain of soft, sparkling motion, a cosmic snowfall that never touches the ground. And through it all, Saturn grows closer, larger, more serene. Your movement toward the planet is slow, almost imperceptible, like floating through a dream, where even gravity feels gentle. The vastness of space wraps around you, and the quiet, that deep, endless quiet, settles into your mind like warm, heavy comfort. You begin to feel as though Saturn's calmness is seeping into you, spreading through your thoughts, your breath, your body. The rings whisper, the shadows soften, the giant sleeps, and you are drifting through the dark, drifting through silence, drifting toward a world that has waited untouched for billions of years, a world that welcomes you, not with sound, but with stillness, a world that feels like a gentle exhale after a long, long day. And as Saturn fills your vision fully now, its rings glowing like pale threads of silk, you understand. You are not here to observe. You are here to rest within the quiet, to rest within the dark, to rest beneath the rings of a sleeping giant that has drifted through the cosmos longer than memory itself. Breathe in, slowly. Breathe out, softly. Let the silence of Saturn wrap around you like a blanket of starlight and drift deeper into the journey ahead. In the earliest ages of our solar system, long before planets found their form, long before rings carved their gentle paths around the giant worlds, there existed only a drifting cloud. Not a dramatic cloud, not a storm of fire or chaos, but a silent, sprawling ocean of dust and gas, stretched across the darkness like a forgotten veil. This was the solar nebula, ancient, cold, quiet, a place where time felt slower, where every grain of dust moved with the patience of eternity. Hydrogen, helium, tiny fragments of ice, specks of rock, nothing yet shaped, nothing yet alive, nothing yet aware of the story it was waiting to become. In this vast, sleeping cloud, gravity stirred, not suddenly, not loudly, but subtly, like a faint breath in an endless night. The nebula began to rotate, gently at first, so slowly the movement was almost impossible to notice. But gravity hears everything. It listens to even the quietest motion in the universe. And so the turning strengthened. Dust began drifting inward, spiraling like tiny dancers drawn toward an invisible stage. Gas followed, gathering in folds, curling into soft eddies around a forming center. This center, this warm, bright knot of gravity, would one day become the Sunday. But far from that heat, far beyond the region where rock and metal could survive molten chaos, the nebula remained cold, calm, spacious. And in that cold and quiet, something else began to take shape. A second center, a second gathering of dust and gas. Soft at first, then stronger. Gentle at first, then steady. It was the beginning of Saturn. Not a planet yet, not even a world, just a region where gravity whispered, "Come closer," and the nebula obeyed. Hydrogen drifted inward like fog, settling into a valley. Helium followed, folding into the growing mass like warm breath in winter air. Ice particles curled into gentle spirals, pulled not by force, but by consistency. A slow, delicate collapse began. Not violent like meteor impacts, not fiery like volcanic eruptions, not loud like the storms that would someday swirl across Jupiter. Saturn formed quietly as frost forming on a window in the middle of the night. This was not a world built from stone. It was not hammered together by collisions. It did not claw its way into existence. Saturn was woven into existence, woven from gas, woven from cold, woven from the softest materials the universe had to offer. While the inner planets were sculpted by heat, molten rock, eruptions, storms of fire, the region where Saturn was born was gentle, a place where dust floated rather than crashed, where gas curled rather than burned, where ice drifted rather than shattered. And so Saturn grew, not like a mountain, but like a cloud gathering at dusk. Slowly, softly, elegantly. A world of softness. Its core formed first a small, dense seed of rock and ice no larger than a tiny fragment of Earth. This would be the anchor, the gravitational heart. But the core was only the beginning. The true Saturn would be much larger, much lighter, much more ethereal. Around this core, hydrogen began to gather. Hydrogen, the simplest element in the universe. Hydrogen, the first child of the Big Bang. Hydrogen, the stuff of stars. But here, far from the sun, hydrogen did not ignite. It cooled. It rested. It formed a blanket around the core, a blanket that grew thicker with each passing millennium. Helium joined it, swirling in quiet layers. Then more hydrogen, then more helium, until Saturn was no longer a seed of rock, but a growing orb of gas. A pale sphere with no true surface, no hard edge, no sharp boundary. Just a gradient, melting gradually into a soft golden glow. The more gas it gathered, the lighter it became. The more massive it grew, the more delicate it appeared. It is one of the universe's quiet ironies. Saturn is enormous, yet light, majestic, yet gentle. A titan, born from softness. If placed in a cosmic ocean deep enough to hold it, Saturn would float. No other planet can claim this. Only Saturn. It is, in a way, the universe's largest feather. Vast, breathtaking, but impossibly light. And this lightness shaped the planet's personality, where Jupiter became a storm of power, bold, loud, filled with lightning and fury. Saturn grew into a world of muted colors and calm motions, a dreamlike world, a soft world, a world that feels like a lullaby. The early Saturn continued to gather gas from the nebula, wrapping itself in layer after layer of hydrogen and helium. Each new layer was smoother than the last soft curls of atmospheric flow settling into golden bands. These bands would become Saturn's quiet signature. Not sharp like Jupiter's stripes, not intense, not dramatic, just smooth, creamy layers drifting around the globe like soft brushstrokes on a pale canvas. As Saturn spun faster, then unbelievably fast, its shape bulged outward at the equator. The planet began to flatten slightly, like a droplet of honey spreading on a glass surface. This rapid spin was not violent, it was rhythmic, steady, calming. A slow-motion heartbeat of a world made of gas. And still, Saturn grew. The young sun brightened. The nebula thinned. The materials that formed Saturn gradually faded away into the quiet of deep space. And when the nebula finally receded, when the dust cleared, and the solar system settled into its familiar orbits, Saturn remained, a pale, perfect sphere of softness, drifting through the dark. No rocky mountains, no solid ground, no jagged cliffs, just layer upon layer of gas, stretching downward into a depth so smooth that falling into Saturn would feel like falling into a cloud, a fall with no end. This gentleness shaped its identity. It made Saturn quieter than the other giants, more serene, more patient, more dreamlike. Jupiter demands attention with its great red spot, a storm larger than Earth itself. But Saturn asks for nothing. It simply exists, as if content to let the universe pass around it. And maybe that is why the rings chose Saturn, because only a world this soft could carry something so delicate. The rings, that impossible halo of ice and silence, would come later in Saturn's story. But even now, in its birth, in its earliest formation, in its first calm footsteps into planetary life, you can feel the presence of rings waiting in its destiny. A gentle planet deserves a gentle crown. A giant born from softness deserves beauty carved from ice. As your mind drifts through this story, you begin to sense Saturn's nature not as a planet, but as a feeling, a mood, a state of calm, a softness carved in cosmic scale. Earth is vibrant, alive, moving, warm. Jupiter is powerful, roaring with storms. Mars is lonely, quiet, and ancient. But Saturn is tranquil, a symbol of peace, floating in the outer dark, a reminder that greatness does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives quietly, woven from gas, shaped by cold, born from patience. A titan, yes, but a titan that whispers, a titan that glows gently beneath the faint sunlight of a distant star. A titan whose birth was not an explosion, but a gathering, a slow, steady gathering of the softest materials the universe had to offer. And now, as you float before it, as you drift through the quiet dark toward the pale golden giant, you can feel that origin story in its presence. There is softness here. There is calm here. There is a quiet older than memory, older than sound, older than planets themselves. Saturn was born from the cold, from the slow, from the gentle. And as you breathe slowly, deeply, quietly, you discover that this story is not only about Saturn, it is also about you. Because you, too, are learning how to drift in silence, how to rest. In the dark, how to find peace. In the slow turning of a quiet universe, Saturn teaches this wordlessly, softly, effortlessly. A giant born from softness reminds you to soften too. And so, your journey continues, deeper into the darkness, closer to the rings, closer to the calm, toward the next chapter. In the story of this sleeping titan, in the deep quiet around Saturn, something fragile glows in the dark, something thin, something impossibly delicate. A halo of ice, a frozen crown, a ringed whisper circling a sleeping giant. From far away, the rings look solid, a clean, perfect disk of pale light. But as you drift closer, the illusion softens. Details begin to unfold. Contours appear, texture emerges, and you see the truth. The rings are not a single surface. They are a cloud, a vast, ancient cloud, made of billions of pieces of ice and dust, tiny fragments, big fragments, some no larger than a grain of sand, others the size of small mountains, each one floating alone, each one reflecting sunlight in its own quiet way. Together they create a river of light spread across the darkness. The scale is breathtaking, the width of continents, yet the thickness no more than a few dozen meters. A structure as wide as a world, but thin as a whisper. A cosmic contradiction. A frozen sheet of breath, set gently into orbit. As you glide nearer, the rings separate into bands, layers, dreamlike arcs of ice, stacked like soft strokes of paint, some bright, some dim, some almost invisible, present only as a faint shimmer under the right angle of light. The brightest band glows like silver, dense, tightly packed, reflecting every touch of sunlight that reaches this far from the Sunday. The dimmest band feels ghost-like, a pale veil drifting across nothingness. Light slips through it, the way moonlight slips through fog. Between these glowing arcs are quiet gaps, spaces carved by gravity, shaped by small moons, guiding the ice like gentle shepherds. These gaps are not empty, they are pauses, soft breaths in the rhythm of the ring. Drifting forward, you pass a faint inner ring lying close to Saturn's upper clouds, so delicate you could almost miss it. Farther out, a thin, twisting filament appears, a ribbon of ice, braided, stretched, shaped by the pull of two tiny moons, moving like silent hands, smoothing the edge of a silk thread. Nothing in the rings is still. Everything flows, everything circles, everything moves, with the softness of breath in sleep. No crash, no rush, no friction, only harmony, only balance, only a quiet drift, lasting billions of years. And yet, for all their peacefulness, the rings hide a story of beginnings and endings. One story says, the rings were born from a moon that ventured too close, a world of ice, pulled apart by Saturn's gravity, shredded into fragments, dissolved into dust. A moon lost, but transformed, its broken pieces becoming beauty. Another story says, the ring material never became a moon at all. It tried, but gravity diverted it, stirred it, kept it from gathering, and so it remained here. A world that almost was, now shimmering forever. as a halo. Maybe both stories are true. Maybe the rings are a mixture of old destruction and new beginnings. Whatever their origin, the result is the same. A frozen river, circling a giant, a glow born from fragments of the past. As you drift inside the halo, light plays across the ice with gentle brilliance. Each particle is a tiny mirror, catching sunlight, bending it, spreading it softly into the shadows. There are no harsh reflections, no sharp flares, only calm glimmers, soft glows, tiny sparks drifting in darkness. Shadows stretch behind the ice, like thin lines of ink, drawn across Saturn's cloud tops. These shadows move, with the planet's slow rotation, painting new lines. Every hour, every day, every season. The effect is hypnotic, a celestial brush, painting patterns on a canvas of gold. As you move deeper into the rings, you see collisions, gentle ones, soft bumps, little taps between pieces of ice, a touch, a drift, a slow separation. Nothing violent. Even in collision, the rings remain calm. Over time, these delicate interactions help shape the structure, pushing particles into lanes, nudging them into patterns, settling them into the smooth, glowing arcs we see from far away. This is not chaos. This is balance, expressed through motion. Sometimes, a bit of dust lifts from one fragment and settles onto another, a quiet exchange between neighbors that may last millennia. Everything here moves in slow, patient cycles. Cycles guided by gravity, by rhythm, by time. And then comes the part most people never realize. This halo is slowly fading. The rings are not eternal. They are being pulled inward, grain by grain, particle by particle, by Saturn's magnetic field. Each tiny piece becomes charged by sunlight. Each one is drawn gently downward, a quiet fall, a soft descent, not water, not snow, but ice, a rain of ice, falling invisibly into Saturn's upper atmosphere. This ring rain is constant, subtle, unstoppable, and in 100 million years, a fleeting moment. In cosmic history, the rings may vanish completely, not in an explosion, not in a collapse, just a slow fade into the clouds below. But their fading does not diminish them. It makes them precious, because beauty that lasts forever becomes invisible. We stop noticing, we stop feeling. Beauty that changes reminds us to look, to breathe, to appreciate. The rings of Saturn are one of those rare beauties, temporary, fragile, quiet, and unforgettable. As you float with them now, watching ice shimmer softly as it circles the giant in silence, you feel a truth settling in. Some beauty is meant to be held gently. Some beauty is meant to be seen slowly. Some beauty is meant to be remembered long after it fades. Beauty does not last forever, but its memory does. And in this moment, with Saturn before you, and its frozen halo glowing softly around it, you are witnessing something that will not always be here, but will always be felt. A frozen halo, a quiet crown, a ring of ancient light, woven from ice, shadows, and time. Tonight, it glows for you. A reminder of fragility, of softness, of quiet wonders found in the dark. And as your breath slows, as your thoughts settle, as your mind softens, the rings continue their endless motion, a lullaby written in ice and whispered across the void. In the pale light that surrounds Saturn, storms do not roar. They do not crack open the sky with fury or tear across the atmosphere in violent displays, like the storms of Earth or Jupiter. Instead, Saturn's storms move with a strange, dreamlike calm, slow, smooth, almost weightless, as if the planet itself is breathing in long, gentle waves. From far away, the atmosphere looks like painted silk, soft bands of cream, gold, and ivory, wrapped gently around the planet's curve. Closer, you begin to see the motion, so subtle at first that you might wonder if anything is moving at all. But it is. All of it is. Every cloud, every ribbon of gas, every pale swirl drifting around the poles. Saturn is not still. It is a giant in slow, continuous motion, a motion too soft to see quickly, but too vast to ever stop. Clouds stretch in long, horizontal bands that circle the planet endlessly, hundreds of thousands of miles. In quiet rotation, each band moves at a different speed. Some drift gently forward, some slip quietly backward, some twist and fold, like silk caught in a breeze. And beneath these gentle motions lie winds that move faster than almost anything in the solar system. Winds that reach more than 1,000 miles per hour, but you would never know it. By looking, Saturn hides its power behind elegance, where Jupiter flashes lightning and storms roar like cosmic engines. Saturn simply breathes. The atmosphere folds and unfolds. Clouds stretch and drift, a calmness that masks a tremendous force beneath. Saturn's storms begin deep within its cloud layers, layers separated not by land or by oceans, but by temperature, pressure, and the delicate balance of hydrogen and helium. Warm gas rises, cold gas falls, and between them, a slow wave begins, a pulse, a gentle push of motion that expands outward. Not an explosion, not a burst, a trembling, a ripple, a soft stirring from the depths of a giant made of gas. As these waves reach the upper atmosphere, they spread out like ripples in a shallow lake. They stretch into curves. They break into spirals. They become long streams that wrap around the planet's girth. Thousands of times over, one wave meets another, and another, and another. Patterns emerge. Soft shapes drawn in vapor, interacting without collision. You begin to see how Saturn's atmosphere is not chaotic, but balanced. Not violent, but rhythmic. Not wild, but meditative. A world that storms with patience. At Saturn's North Pole lies one of the most mysterious structures in the entire solar system. A perfect hexagon, a six-sided storm, a geometric cloud, a shape that should not exist in nature. Yet here it is, steadily rotating, generation after generation. Imagine a hurricane, so vast, it could swallow our entire planet. Now imagine it shaped not like a circle, but like a hexagon with clear, sharp edges. And imagine it, never stopping, never drifting, never losing its shape. The hexagon turns, as if carved into the atmosphere itself, a polygon made of wind, a shape defined not by land or coastline or pressure walls, but purely by motion. No thunder, no lightning, no noise, only the steady, swirling hum of gas moving in harmony with the planet's rotation. Inside the hexagon lies a vortex, a deep, rotating eye, with clouds nestled around its rim, in soft waves. Some call it a storm, but it feels more like a dream repeating itself, over and over. As Saturn turns through the dark, no one fully understands how the hexagon maintains its shape. But one idea is this: waves of motion rise from the depths of Saturn. These waves travel outward, bending in different directions, depending on the speed and density of the surrounding gas. Over time, the waves fold together into a stable pattern, a standing wave that locks into a geometric rhythm. And so the hexagon persists, not violently, not chaotically, just continuously, like a whisper that never stops, like a heartbeat in a sleeping body. The air here moves fast, stronger than Earth's jet streams, stronger even than Jupiter's belts. Yet Saturn hides this power. Beneath softness, the clouds do not appear sharp or rigid or storm-torn. They appear smooth, gentle, almost serene. The faster the winds blow, the smoother the bands become. The more intense the weather, the more peaceful the appearance. Saturn is a paradox, a calm world, powered by tremendous motion. Further down toward the equator, storms come and go, like slow thoughts drifting through a tired mind. Most are small, whirls of white, eddies of cream, soft spirals barely visible, until time-lapse reveals their motion. But once every 30 Earth years, when Saturn completes one orbit around the Sun, a great storm forms. A storm so large, it wraps around the planet like a glowing band of milk. This is the Great White Spot, Saturn's version of Jupiter's Great Red Spot, but quieter, cooler, more fleeting. The Great White Spot appears in a burst of brightness, its clouds billowing upward in slow-rising towers. The storm stretches, hundreds of thousands of miles across, as wide as the rings themselves. And then, just as gently as it came, it fades. The clouds settle, the brightness dims, and the atmosphere returns to its soft, muted bands, a memory of a storm that will return only decades later. Saturn's storms are born from contrasts: warm gas rising from deep within the planet, cold gas sinking from the outer layers, a cycle so continuous that it becomes part of the planet's rhythm. Inside the giant, metallic hydrogen churns. In hidden depths, energy rises slowly, patiently, not in sharp bursts, but in deep, rolling waves that take years to reach the surface. These waves break through the cloud layers in soft eruptions, not loud enough to shake the air, but strong enough to sculpt the atmosphere. Storm becomes flow, flow becomes band, band becomes symmetry, symmetry becomes peace. Saturn does not express power with violence. It expresses power with grace. Imagine standing at the edge of an endless, pale ocean. The waters are calm, smooth, barely moving, but beneath the surface runs a current, strong enough to circle a world. This is Saturn's atmosphere, a calm sea with deep, invisible tides, and through it all, storms drift like slow dreams. Clouds gather, clouds disperse, shapes form, shapes fade. Each movement gentle, each movement balanced, each movement flowing into the next. A storm begins with a pale spiral, barely noticeable, against the golden background. It stretches, it arcs, it wraps around itself in quiet folds. Hours pass, then days, then weeks. You watch it change in slow motion, the kind of motion that helps the mind loosen, soften, float. The storm never rages. It unfurls. It exhales. It drifts. Even in its strongest moments, it remains composed, a dancer moving within the weight of its own silence. High above the equator, thin white cloud streaks slide past one another like soft ribbons. Each ribbon moves at a slightly different speed. Where they touch, they curl. Where they separate, they straighten. These curls are storms, but they look like whispers, whispers drawn in vapor. At the poles, the storms twist deeper. They sink inward, millions of miles, into the planet's soft heart. Yet from the outside, you see only a gentle spin, a faint swirl, in a field of pale gold. Everything here is deep. Everything here is soft. Everything here is patient. If you watch long enough, you realize something simple and strange. Saturn's atmosphere is not a surface. It is a feeling expressed through motion, through slow drift, through quiet cycles of warm rising and cold sinking, through an endless exchange between depth and light. Even the colors seem to breathe. Cream blends into ivory. Ivory melts into gold. Gold dissolves into shadow. The atmosphere is a living gradient, its hues shifting with the softness of candlelight. You feel it as you drift, a sense of slowness, a sense of warmth in a cold, distant world, a sense of peace. Inside a storm, Saturn teaches you that not all storms need to rage. Not all storms need to destroy. Not all storms need to be loud. Some storms move like dreams, soft, silent, deep. Some storms are meant to soothe, not to frighten. As your view widens over the planet's glowing surface, clouds drift beneath you in slow, mesmerizing waves. It feels like watching sleep itself, a planet dreaming in pale gold. And through it all, the storms continue, not as chaos, but as rhythm, a rhythm that invites you to slow down, to breathe more gently, to move with the same softness that guides Saturn's winds. The giant planet turns, the clouds drift, the storms swirl in silent spirals, and you, traveling softly through the dark, feel yourself drifting into the same calm cycle. Saturn does not just show its storms, it shares them. It lends you their softness, their patience, their quiet power, storms that do not demand, storms that do not intrude, storms that do not overwhelm, storms that simply exist, moving like slow dreams across a gentle world. And as you breathe with them now, deep, slow, steady, you discover the truth. Even the wildest forces in the universe can learn to move quietly. Even chaos can learn to rest. Even storms can become dreams. In the quiet solitude of Saturn's orbit, there is a truth about the ringed giant that will always feel a little unreal, a little dreamlike, as if Saturn were built not by the laws of physics, but by the quiet imagination of a universe that sometimes prefers softness over structure. Saturn has no surface, no ground, no land, no solid place where a foot could ever touch down. It is a world made entirely of gas, an enormous sphere, woven from hydrogen and helium, the same simple elements that first ignited the stars. From a distance, Saturn looks firm. Its golden bands seem steady. Its smooth shape looks carved. Its form feels whole, as if it were a polished marble planet, floating through the night. But that, too, is an illusion. Every line you see on Saturn, every stripe, every swirl, every soft wave of pale gold, is cloud. Not land, not rock, not anything that could hold your weight, even for a moment. If you were to fall into Saturn, you would fall through sky, and then more sky, and then deeper sky, in a descent so gentle and so continuous that it would feel less like falling and more like drifting through an endless sea of warm breath. No surface is waiting. No impact waits below. No boundary catches you. Just layer after layer of atmosphere, growing heavier, denser, warmer, more mysterious as you sink deeper into the giant. The upper layers are cold, cold enough for ammonia crystals to form and drift like snow through golden vapor. Winds sweep these crystals into streaks across the horizon, thin white brushstrokes, painted on a canvas of gold. Beneath the ammonia clouds lie deeper layers of water vapor and hydrogen fog, stacked in vast horizontal bands that ripple gently beneath the dim sunlight. The sunlight here is faint, only a fraction of the warmth that touches Earth, yet the clouds glow softly, with a light of their own, reflecting the sun, like a distant memory that refuses to fade. As you sink through these layers, you feel the pressure rising, slowly at first, like the tightening of warm air in a sealed room, then heavier, denser, as if the sky itself has weight. Cloud becomes fog. Fog becomes haze. Haze becomes fluid. Atmosphere becomes ocean. Not an ocean of water, but an ocean of gas, so dense that it flows like liquid. Here, in this strange middle realm, you drift through a world that behaves like both sky and sea, waves of gas curling inward in slow, rolling motions, driven by the deep churning below. The deeper you go, the more alien the atmosphere becomes. The hydrogen thickens into a warm, heavy fluid, flowing in massive tides that stretch for thousands of miles. These tides are invisible from above, but their influence echoes upward, through every layer, through the bands of cloud, through the ribbons of storm, through the hexagon spinning at the pole, through the soft, endless flow that shapes Saturn's outer beauty. And deeper still, after miles upon miles of warm, pressurized hydrogen, you reach a boundary where the familiar laws of matter begin to change. Hydrogen, squeezed by gravity into a state of unimaginable density, becomes something new. It becomes metallic. Metallic hydrogen, a form of hydrogen, so compressed that electrons move freely, making the substance shine like liquid metal. This ocean of metallic hydrogen is Saturn's hidden heart, an inner sea, glowing without light, conducting electricity, moving in slow, massive currents. From this ocean emerges Saturn's magnetic field, not the strongest in the solar system, but vast, elegant, and deeply tied to the giant's internal rhythm. Imagine it, a world with no solid core, in the traditional sense, and yet a world with a heart, made of a fluid that behaves like molten silver, a heart not beating, but flowing, not pulsing, but turning, not alive, but undeniably dynamic. Saturn is massive, yet it would float, a planet wide as 9 Earths, but with a density lower than water. If you could place Saturn in a cosmic ocean, it would drift, a giant bubble, rising gently to the surface. This lightness defines Saturn's character. It is a giant with a soft spirit, a titan without the weight of stone, a world without a single mountain, without a ridge, without a canyon, a world where nothing stays still and nothing stands firm. And yet, it is a world full of depth, a world defined not by where your feet could stand, but by how far your mind can sink into the idea of a never-ending sky. To fall into Saturn is to surrender to softness, to let go of the instinct, to reach the bottom, to embrace the sensation of sinking deeper and deeper into a place that never asks you to stop. Imagine that fall. You step into the golden atmosphere. The clouds part. The light softens. Your descent begins. At first, you drift like a snowflake in gentle air, then slower still as the air grows thicker and the warmth wraps around you like a blanket. There is no fear in the fall, no rush, no impact waiting below. Only layers, layers of sky, layers of depth, layers of softness. Every second of descent feels like an exhale. Every inhale fills you with warmth. The deeper you drift, the quieter the world becomes. The winds fade, the distant glow dims. The weight of hydrogen presses in with a comforting heaviness, like sinking into warm water after a long, long day. And down, far down, where the pressure becomes immense and the heat grows thick, the clouds stop resembling clouds and begin resembling dreams, patterns shifting in slow waves, shapes forming and dissolving like thoughts in the mind of a planet half asleep. Here, sound does not travel far. Silence thickens. Time slows. Your fall becomes not a descent, but a meditation. You are not falling toward an ending. You are falling into Saturn's essence, into a world without edges, without ground, without certainty, only depth, only motion, only calm, and deeper still, where hydrogen transforms into metallic tides. The warmth becomes profound, not scorching like fire, but enveloping, ancient, primordial, a warmth that feels like the memory of stars. You float in that warmth. You dissolve into it. You become part of the calmness, part of the pressure, part of the silent ocean. Inside the giant, there is no bottom. In this dream, no destination, no place to land, only drifting, only sinking, only living inside the concept of a world that never stops giving you space to fall. Saturn is a giant, born from softness, and everything about it reminds you of the beauty of letting go. Letting go of structure, letting go of certainty, letting go of the need to find a place to stand. Saturn invites you to float with it, to rest with it, to surrender to its depth, and let yourself fall in the gentlest way possible. Because on Saturn, falling is simply being. Descent is simply existence. Motion is simply calm. And the truth of this world, the soft truth that stays with you long after you leave the dream, is this: Saturn is a world where falling never ends, and somehow that makes it the most peaceful place in the solar system, in the quiet outskirts of the solar system, where sunlight reaches like a faded memory and space lies wide and still. Saturn is never truly alone. It drifts through the dark with a family, a vast, gentle family of frozen worlds that orbit in slow, graceful arcs around their giant parent. More than 80 moons, 83 and counting, each one different, each one shaped by time, by ice, by silence. Each one a small world, with its own story, its own scars, its own quiet ways of reflecting the distant sunlight. Saturn's moons do not roar. They do not shine brightly or burn with fire. They do not command attention like Earth's moon or Jupiter's volcanic Io. They whisper, they drift, they circle the giant with the gentlest devotion, tiny companions around a sleeping titan. If Saturn itself is a floating world made of softness, its moons are the sparks of quiet light that keep it company across billions of miles of night. And as you drift closer to them now, you feel the presence of a family that has existed longer than any life on Earth, small or large, bright or dim, smooth or shattered. Each moon speaks softly. In the void, each moon is a world of its own, a frozen dream, circling the giant. The first to greet you is Mimas. Small, round, cold, a little moon, barely more than 100 miles across. But Mimas holds a secret, a face that has echoed through science fiction for decades. One enormous crater, a deep scar named Herschel, carved across its surface. Like the imprint of an ancient collision, the crater gives Mimas a strangely familiar look, a sphere with a giant circular depression, a resemblance so uncanny that many call it the Death Star moon. But here, in this quiet narration, there is no menace, no laser cannon, no fear, just a small world with a large scar, a wound frozen in time. Beneath the gentle glow of Saturn, Mimas drifts like a pebble of silence. Its craters catch soft shadows, its horizon curves like the surface of a frosted pearl. If you stood on Mimas, though you cannot truly stand, in this dreamlike telling, you would feel a quiet so complete that even your own breath might seem too loud for the landscape. Above you, Saturn would fill half the sky. Its rings would stretch overhead like pale ribbons of frozen light, and Mimas would continue its orbit unbothered, undisturbed, at peace. Beyond Mimas drifts Rhea. Rhea is larger, more mature, a serene world of ice, wrapped in a thin glow of reflected sunlight. Everything about Rhea feels calm. Its surface is dense with craters, but unlike many moons, with sharp, violent scars, Rhea's craters look softened, as though time has gently smoothed their edges. With layers of frost, a world covered in white, like a sleeping landscape after a gentle snowfall, Rhea is quiet, utterly quiet. No tectonics, no eruptions, no storms, just ancient ice, holding its shape for billions of years. If Mimas is a pebble, Rhea is a sculpture, a frozen artwork, carved by impacts and preserved by a cold that never relents. And still, it feels gentle. You can imagine floating just above Rhea's surface, looking down on plains of ice that glitter faintly with the soft hue of distant starlight. On Rhea, nothing rushes. Nothing changes quickly. Every moment feels suspended, as if the moon is holding still, so the universe can rest for a little while. Then there is Tethys and Dione, two moons, often spoken of together, two worlds so similar, yet so distinct. When viewed closely, Tethys is bright, one of the most reflective moons in Saturn's entire family. Its icy surface shines like polished snow, even under the dimmest sunlight. Deep canyons stretch across it, like the frozen cracks in ancient glass. The largest canyon, Ithaca Chasma, runs across Tethys for over 1,000 miles, a scar from a time when the moon cracked open under its own internal forces. But even this fracture, massive as it is, feels peaceful. The canyon walls are soft, smoothed by time. The shadows inside the canyon are cool and gentle, inviting your imagination to wander through its silence. Dione, Tethys's quiet sibling, drifts not far away. Dione has a face marked by history, craters, ridges, and strange bright streaks that run across its surface, like frost-lined rivers. These bright lines are icy cliffs, faults where the moon's crust once stretched and cracked, exposing fresh ice from within. Against the dark of Saturn's sky, these streaks glow, not brightly, not fiercely, but softly, as if illuminated by the memory of sunlight. Dione carries a sense of age, a sense of endurance, a sense of being shaped not by violence, but by slow, inevitable change. Together, Tethys and Dione feel like two pages from the same old book, two chapters of an ancient story written in ice. As you drift among them, you begin to sense the deeper pattern. In Saturn's family, none of these moons shout for attention. None of them burn with color or flame. None of them erupt with the force of distant worlds. Like Io or Triton, Saturn's moons are quiet, soft, patient. each one a frozen relic of the early solar system, each one a tiny time capsule of ancient ice. But their quietness is not emptiness. It is peace. It is dignity. It is the calm of worlds that have witnessed billions of years without needing to change to be beautiful. You drift farther out, and more moons appear, each with its own character, its own way of shining. In the faint sunlight, some are small, so small that they look more like wandering stones than worlds. Pandora, Prometheus, Janus, Epimetheus, little shepherd moons that guide the edges of Saturn's rings with delicate gravitational hands. Others are larger, rounder, older, moons like Enceladus and Titan, whose stories deserve chapters of their own, but those come later. For now, you remain among the ancient, the quiet, the icy companions that orbit Saturn with soft devotion. Imagine gliding above the surface of Dione, its cliffs glowing faintly under the soft blue of Saturn's shine. Imagine drifting past the canyon of Tethys, a valley carved in exquisite stillness. Imagine rising above Rhea's terrain, a world wide and white, like an untouched winter plain. Each moon offers a glimpse into a kind of silence. Earth cannot hold a silence that does not come from the absence of life, but from the presence of timelessness. These moons are old, older than Earth's continents, older than the oceans, older than the life that would one day look up at the night sky and wonder what lay beyond it. Each crater, each ridge, each frozen plain is a memory etched in ice, not written by hands, but by time itself. And yet, despite their age, despite their coldness, despite their loneliness, these moons feel gentle. They feel like companions to a giant who cannot speak. They feel like guardians, circling a world made of softness. They feel like candles, burning quietly in the vast cathedral of Saturn's orbit. Here among them, you feel something slow down inside you. Your breath, your thoughts, your sense of urgency. Everything becomes quieter. Everything becomes softer. As if Saturn's moons are not only orbiting the giant, but orbiting you, keeping watch, keeping rhythm, keeping peaceful company on your journey through the dark. And one thought rises gently in your mind, a thought shaped by everything you've seen and everything you've felt amid these frozen worlds. Every moon is a world. Every world has a story. And every story, told in its own time, can become a place to rest. Far beyond the warmth of the inner solar system, far beyond the reach of familiar blue skies and bright oceans, there is a world wrapped in mystery, a world the color of candlelight, glowing softly beneath a haze of gold and amber. This world is Titan, Saturn's largest moon, a place so strange, so quiet, so dreamlike, that it feels less like a moon and more like a planet that fell asleep before it ever woke. As you drift toward Titan, the first thing you notice is not the surface, it is not the lakes, it is not the land, it is the atmosphere. Titan is one of the few moons in the entire solar system with a true, substantial atmosphere, a blanket so thick, so layered, so deeply colored, that the surface beneath it is almost impossible to see from space. The haze glows softly, like the light inside a lantern, a muted orange, tinged with gold, flowing outward in gentle gradients that blur the edges of the world below. This atmosphere is dense, denser than Earth's, heavier than Mars's, rich with nitrogen, and laced with hydrocarbon mist. On Titan, the air would feel almost touchable, thick, soft, slow, as if the sky were made, not of gas, but of faintly glowing fog. Even sunlight moves differently here. By the time it reaches Titan, it has traveled nearly 1 billion miles. The brightness of Earth has faded into a kind of twilight, a pale, weakened glow that filters through the orange haze in long, lazy beams. Nothing on Titan is sharp. Nothing is bright. Everything is bathed in a permanent dusk, a gentle dimness that softens the entire world, like a quiet dream suspended in time. If you were floating just above its surface, you would feel as though you were inside a giant, glowing cloud. Shadows dissolve, distances fade, edges blur. Titan does not show itself quickly. It reveals itself slowly, like a shy world waiting for you to adjust your eyes to its gentle light. As you descend deeper into Titan's atmosphere, the haze grows thicker, not oppressive, not heavy, but comforting, like stepping into warm mist. The wind is faint, barely noticeable. It carries particles of hydrocarbon dust that drift in slow curls, moving with a grace that feels almost underwater. This is a world where everything slows down. Falling objects sink gently instead of dropping. Clouds drift instead of rush. Even time feels like it stretches a little longer. Through the golden fog, a landscape begins to emerge. Not suddenly, not sharply, but gradually, as if the world is remembering to show you its shape, and what a shape it is. Titan has lakes, seas, rivers, shorelines carved by the slow movement of liquid over millions of years. But these are not lakes of water, not oceans made of salt and tide. The surface of Titan is far too cold for that. Here, water is harder than rock. Ice forms the bedrock beneath your feet. Ice builds the mountains. Ice shapes the valleys. Water on Titan is stone. What flows in Titan's rivers and lakes is methane, liquid ethane, hydrocarbon seas, pouring across a frozen world at temperatures so low that nitrogen itself could almost condense. The lakes gleam faintly under the dim sun, smooth, dark, more reflective than glass. Their surfaces barely ripple. The air is too thick and the winds too gentle to disturb them. These lakes are mirrors reflecting the faint orange glow that seeps through the atmosphere. Some are small, like ponds hidden between icy hills. Others are vast, spanning hundreds of miles. The largest of them, Kraken Mare, is a sea large enough to swallow entire countries on Earth. Imagine standing on the edge of a methane sea, beneath a golden sky, hearing nothing but the faint creak of freezing hydrocarbons. settling against the shore. Imagine dipping your hand into liquid so cold that it would evaporate your warmth instantly. Yet on Titan, it is simply another flow in an ancient cycle. On Earth, we breathe nitrogen and drink water. On Titan, the air is nitrogen, and the seas are liquid methane, a reversed mirror of our home. Different, alien, but still familiar in a strange, gentle way. Rain falls on Titan too. But Titan rain does not fall like Earth rain. It does not patter. It does not rush. It does not streak down from clouds. In sudden bursts, Titan's rain falls slowly, very slowly. A single drop might drift downward for minutes, floating, suspended, carried by thick air and weak gravity. Imagine watching a raindrop descend so gently that you could walk beside it and still reach the ground. Before it does, imagine listening to rain so soft that it sounds like silence. This is Titan, a world where storms are quiet events, where clouds gather lazily, where thunder does not exist, where rainfall is more like drifting dew. The rain nourishes the lakes, fills the rivers, carves the shorelines, not with force, but with patience. Titan has dunes, mountain ridges, and long valleys shaped by erosion and flowing methane. These dunes are made of dark organic grains, tiny particles created from methane and sunlight, a slow chemistry that paints Titan in shades of charcoal and amber. The dunes stretch for miles, rippled like the surface of a sleeping ocean. They move, but very slowly, perhaps only a few feet, every 1,000 years. The whole world feels ancient and unhurried, as if time itself has settled into a calmer rhythm beneath the orange sky. And beneath Titan's surface, beneath the frozen crust and hydrocarbon lakes, lies a secret, a hidden ocean, a deep, buried sea of liquid water, mixed with ammonia, a warm ocean protected from the freezing cold above. This ocean raises an idea, a quiet, careful idea, that Titan could hold something like life. Not life as we know it, not life that breathes oxygen or swims in water, but life in another form. Life made from hydrocarbons. Life that thrives in cold chemistry. Life that moves slowly, thinks slowly, exists softly beneath the amber sky. Scientists do not know if such life exists, but Titan gives them reason to wonder. It is one of the only places in the solar system where the chemistry of life seems ready, waiting, as if the world has the ingredients for a recipe we have not yet learned to read. Titan has complex molecules. In its atmosphere, organic compounds fall like snow. Hydrocarbon lakes store the building blocks of biological thought, and beneath it all, a warm ocean, a world of two layers, one frozen, one liquid, like a heart hidden beneath armor. Titan might not be alive, but it feels alive. It feels like a world holding its breath, a world on the edge of becoming, a world with stories waiting in the deep. As you drift above Titan's terrain, you feel its calmness, settle into your chest. The thick air, the soft light, the slow rain, the quiet lakes, everything here moves at a pace that invites rest. This is not a world of storms, not a world of heat, not a world of noise. It is a world of softness, a world of gentle cycles, a world of slow chemistry and slower winds, a world that whispers instead of shouts, a world that glows instead of shines, a world that moves like a dream you do not want to wake from. Titan is Saturn's largest moon, but it behaves more like a small planet, a place where weather exists, where seasons arrive, where landscapes evolve in slow, methodical ways. The northern hemisphere holds massive methane seas. The southern hemisphere holds dried-up lake beds from ages long gone. Storms form around the equator during seasonal changes, gathering in soft spirals before releasing rainfall that darkens the dunes and refills the basins. Even the winds, though light, are enough to shape the surface. They push the dunes, grain by grain, into long lines that stretch for miles, soft ridges like wrinkles in Titan's golden skin. If you stood on Titan and breathed the nitrogen-thick air through a protective suit, you would see a world bathed in orange mist. Mountains of water ice would rise around you. Like sculpted stone, dark dunes would ripple across the horizon, and ahead you might glimpse a lake so still that it reflects the sky perfectly, a mirror lost inside an amber dream. You would hear nothing, not even your footsteps, just your own breath echoing inside your helmet, the only sound in a world that has learned the art of quiet. And as you stand there, beneath a sky that never brightens fully, you might feel as though you've stepped into a memory rather than a place. A memory of something ancient, a memory of something waiting. Titan is not dramatic. It does not dazzle with color or fire. It does not erupt or roar or burn. Its beauty is a soft beauty, a slow beauty, a beauty you must meet with patience, a beauty you drift into the way you drift into sleep. The orange haze, the methane lakes, the slow rain, the dunes and ridges etched in silence, the buried ocean, whispering possibilities. All of it adds up to a world that feels less like a moon and more like a poem written in methane and ice, in nitrogen clouds and hydrocarbon snow, in light so soft it barely seems to touch. A poem about what life might become in a universe vast enough for infinite forms. On Titan, you are reminded that life is not a single recipe, not a single pattern, not a single path. Life is possibility. Life is chemistry. Life is patience. And Titan, with its orange sky, its quiet lakes, its gentle rhythms, is a world built entirely from possibility. A world waiting, watching, holding secrets deep beneath its frozen crust. A world that teaches us through stillness, through quietness, through the softness of its rain, that not all wonders need to shout to be extraordinary. Some wonders exist exactly like Titan, calm, distant, golden, and slow. A world that glows with the promise of what might be hiding beneath the surface. A world that invites you to drift with it, to breathe with it, to rest inside its haze. An orange world with quiet lakes, slow rain, and the faint, delicate whisper of life that could exist in forms we have not yet imagined. And as you float above this gentle moon, wrapped in its dim, soft twilight, you feel one truth settle quietly into your mind. Not all worlds are loud. Not all worlds are bright. Not all worlds are warm. Some worlds rest in silence. Some glow in dusk. Some hold their secrets in the deep. And Titan, Saturn's orange moon, is one of those worlds. A world that sleeps with its lakes. A world that dreams beneath its haze. A world that waits in quiet possibility for its story to be told, far from the warmth of the sun, in a region of space so cold that even light seems to shiver. There drifts a small, pale moon, a tiny world wrapped in white, quiet as a breath, soft as a snowflake frozen in time. This is Enceladus, a world so small it could rest comfortably inside the borders of a single country. A moon so light, so fragile, that if you held it in the palm of your imagination, you might be afraid to close your fingers around it. Enceladus is only about 300 miles across, a sphere the size of a large winter island, floating alone in the cold dark around Saturn. And yet, despite its smallness, despite its fragile appearance, it holds something extraordinary, something that makes it shine with a kind of quiet importance. Above its icy surface, sunlight glints off frozen plains and bright, reflective deserts of powdery frost. Enceladus is one of the most reflective objects in the entire solar system. It is so bright that it returns almost all light that touches it, a moon that glows with borrowed sunlight. From far away, Enceladus looks like a clean white pearl drifting through the night. But as you come closer, as you drift gently toward its frozen shell, details emerge from the brilliant whiteness. Ridges, fractures, long, curving stripes that stretch across the South Pole like veins of pale sapphire on a marble surface. These are the tiger stripes, deep cracks in Enceladus's ice crust, cracks that pulse with heat, with energy, with motion, cracks that breathe. For Enceladus, small as it is alive with interior warmth. Under its crust lies something astonishing, something almost impossible for a world so cold, so distant, so tiny. A global ocean, a vast, hidden sea beneath the ice. An entire ocean, kept warm, not by sunlight, but by the moon's own inner energy. Imagine that. An ocean larger than all the water on Earth, combined, tucked beneath a shell of frozen white. It is a secret world, silent from the outside, yet full of movement within. The ice above it may be tens of miles thick, but beneath that crust, the water flows freely. Liquid, warm enough to move, mixed with minerals, and stirred constantly. by hydrothermal vents at the ocean floor. As you drift above the South Pole, you see something remarkable, something that first startled scientists, then amazed them, then filled them with wonder and possibility. Jets, plumes, geysers of water bursting through the cracks in the ice. Dozens of them, hundreds even, thin streams of vapor and icy crystals rising miles into the sky like soft white feathers, lifting off the surface. They do not roar, they do not erupt violently. They rise in silence, in slow arcs, as if the moon is exhaling gently into the vacuum of space. These plumes are made of warm water from the ocean below, water that has seeped upward through the cracks, heated by the rocky core, then released in a continuous sigh into the darkness above. As they leave the surface, the warm droplets freeze instantly, turning into tiny grains of snow that drift outward, glittering like dust, caught in a beam of distant light. Some of these particles fall back to the surface, blanketing Enceladus in fresh frost, year after year. Some drift farther, out into the space around Saturn, where they join the planet's magnificent rings. Part of the beauty you see circling Saturn comes from here, from Enceladus, from this tiny world, whose gentle breath feeds a halo of ice around the giant. The plumes are steady, persistent, eternal in appearance, a constant whisper, rising from the cracks in the south polar ice, and inside those plumes, carried upward from the deepest places of the ocean below, are clues, gentle chemical clues that hint at something even more extraordinary. Organic molecules, the building blocks of life. Simple compounds formed naturally in warm, mineral-rich water, fragments of carbon chains, signs that the ocean beneath the ice is not still, not empty, not inert. It is active, it is warm, it is chemically rich. It is a place where life could exist. Not life like ours, not life that breathes oxygen or walks on land or swims in sunlight, but life that thrives in darkness, life that feeds on chemical energy, life that gathers around hydrothermal vents deep below the frozen crust, just like life once did on Earth. The idea is not fantasy. It is science, quiet science, patient science, science drawn from data and detection and careful analysis of what flows from Enceladus's geysers. The simplest version of the idea is this: if life can exist around hydrothermal vents on Earth, thriving without sunlight, without plants, without atmosphere, then perhaps it could exist on Enceladus too. A distant ocean, a warm seafloor, minerals, organic molecules, energy, time. These are the ingredients. Enceladus has all of them. And this is why, despite being so small and so quiet, Enceladus has become one of the most important moons in the search for life beyond Earth. A world hidden under ice, a world that breathes into space, a world that whispers its secrets through frozen plumes of glittering snow. As you drift slowly, above the tiger stripes, you can see the cracks glowing faintly, not with light, but with warmth. These fractures are the moon's heartbeat, the places where the hidden ocean touches the sky. Imagine hovering above one of them. Beneath you, a long, deep canyon of crystalline blue, stretching across the pole. Thin streams of vapor rise in gentle spirals. Icy particles shimmer. As they drift outward, the light touches them just enough to make them glow, like tiny lanterns floating into the dark. And below, far below, in the warm, dark ocean, water flows, minerals dissolve, heat rises, chemical reactions take place over and over in eternal cycles. If you could dive into that ocean, if you could move through the cracks and slip beneath the ice, you would discover a world of profound quiet, dark, warm, moving, alive with energy. Columns of mineral-rich water rise like pillars from the rocky sea floor, carrying heat into the ocean above. Particles drift slowly in the gentle currents. The pressure is immense, but the water moves with peaceful intention, a slow, steady circulation that has continued for billions of years. There, in the quiet warmth, beneath the ice, life could thrive. Without sunlight, life could exist in forms we do not recognize. Life could build its own slow rhythms in the dark, and above that ocean, on the frozen crust, you would find nothing but stillness. Frozen plains stretch out for miles. The horizon curves gently under a white sky that never clears. Tiny grains of ice fall softly from the geysers, settling back to the surface like a continuous snowfall, a world covered in its own breath. Enceladus looks peaceful, simple, small, a white pebble, lost in Saturn's enormous shadow. But you now know better. Underneath is a world more complex than its exterior suggests. A world of heat in a place of cold. A world of water beneath a desert of ice. A world of chemical possibility hidden in its depths. And you understand why Enceladus is one of the most captivating and hopeful worlds ever discovered. A small moon holding an ocean that could contain the first life beyond Earth. A tiny giant in the search for answers. A whisper of warmth in a universe of cold. As you drift away from the South Pole, you glance back one more time at the plumes rising from the tiger stripes, those delicate fountains of frozen breath. They rise, they fall, they drift outward, becoming part of Saturn's rings, a cycle that has continued for ages, a cycle that may continue for ages more. Everything about Enceladus is subtle, soft, quiet. Even its greatest secret is not shouted, it is exhaled gently into space. And as you float away from it, letting the moon shrink into a small white spark, in the distance, you feel a sense of quiet awe, a sense that hidden beneath the cold, beneath the ice, beneath the silence, there is something warm, alive, waiting. Enceladus teaches you that even the smallest worlds can hold the greatest mysteries, that even the coldest places can harbor warmth, that even the quietest moons can whisper the loudest truths. And as you continue your journey through Saturn's realm, one thought follows you, like the echo of a distant wave. Sometimes, the places that seem the most empty are the ones most full of life. Far from the warmth of the inner solar system, in a region where sunlight weakens into a pale whisper and shadows stretch across distances, measured in billions of miles, the giant Saturn follows its long, patient path around the Sunday. It is a path defined not by speed, nor urgency, nor competition, but by calm endurance, by distance, by slowness. Saturn lives in a place where light arrives softly, as if exhausted from its long journey, where the sun is no longer a blazing star, but a tiny, distant ember, a faint, hazy pearl, hanging in a dark ocean. Here, light has traveled more than 1 billion miles, stretching itself thin, losing its intensity, softening into something gentle. On Earth, the sun paints bright mornings and brilliant noons. It casts sharp shadows and fills the sky with warmth. But on Saturn, sunlight feels like the last glow of evening, soft, weak, as though the universe itself is preparing to rest. Everything here unfolds in the calm tone of cosmic twilight, a quiet glow, a dim, endless dusk. If you stood on one of Saturn's moons, or drifted slowly above the giant's golden clouds, you would see the sun as a pale circle, barely brighter than a distant star. It would cast light, but not heat. Shadows would be soft, barely noticeable. The horizon would glow with a faint golden blur. It feels like living inside a perpetual sunset. And maybe that is why Saturn moves the way it does, slowly, calmly, almost with reverence. A year on Saturn is long, very long, 29.5 Earth years, nearly 3 decades for one orbit, 3 decades for one cycle of seasons. Imagine that. Winter lasting 7 years, spring lasting 7 more, summer holding on for another 7, and autumn, slow and gentle, closing the cycle over 7 more years again. A season on Saturn does not arrive in a day. It does not shift abruptly or surprise the world. It emerges like a tide, gradual, patient, creeping across the planet's atmosphere, one slow swirl at a time. Clouds adjust to the change. Over years, storms build gradually, moving in slow spirals that seem to mimic the passage of centuries. Nothing rushes here. Nothing needs to. Time itself seems to move differently, slower, deeper, more anchored to the vastness of space. When Saturn turns on its axis, day and night come and go, with a cycle only slightly longer than Earth's, a little more than 10 hours. But the light of those hours is thin, gentle, barely strong enough to brighten the tops of the clouds. Imagine a day that feels like an early evening, and a night that feels no different than day, just darker, calmer, colder. Imagine sunsets that take hours to fade. Imagine dawns that warm the sky as delicately as water simmering below a boil. This is Saturn's rhythm: slow daylight, soft nightfall, decades of shifting seasons. This lonely orbit is not a burden to the planet. It is its nature, its character, its identity. The outer solar system is vast and empty, but it is not hostile, not in the way one might expect. It is simply slow, simply quiet, simply wide, and Saturn has learned to exist within that pace. As you drift in orbit with the planet, you begin to feel the scale of the journey it makes. The sun feels small. The space between worlds feels endless. The path Saturn follows feels like an arc carved into the fabric of black silk. This orbit is a long walk through shadows. Silence surrounds everything. There are no winds of space, no sounds from the vacuum, no echoes bouncing from distant objects. Only the ongoing motion of Saturn and its family of moons. A slow procession through the dark. Despite the loneliness, there is beauty here. A profound kind of beauty that only distance can create. A beauty formed from the contrast between the faint sunlight and the deep black of space. Saturn glows quietly in that dimness. Its golden hues become warmer, as if the planet keeps a secret warmth inside. Sometimes, when Saturn reaches a certain point in its long orbit, its rings tilt perfectly toward the Sunday. They catch the faint light and scatter it outward in wide sprays of pale brightness. From far away, it looks as though Saturn is wearing a halo made of dusted snow, shining softly in the cold. Other times, the rings turn edge-on to the Sunday. They become so thin, they almost disappear. A faint line of faint light, barely perceptible against the black. These moments in Saturn's orbit are reminders of the vast cycles governing this world. Cycles of tilt, of shadow, of day, of season, of time itself. Everything on Saturn takes longer, changes more slowly, rests more deeply. Time is not rushed here. Time is stretched. Time is softened. And as you drift with Saturn through its long, lonely journey, you begin to feel your own sense of time stretch as well. Your thoughts slow down. Your breathing steadies. Your awareness settles into a calmer place. It becomes easy to imagine spending decades in a single season, years in a single glow, a lifetime in a single orbit. Distance does that. It quiets everything. It gives space to ideas and feelings that rush by too quickly. In the inner solar system, here, in the cold, deep dark, you can feel Saturn's orbit, as though it were a meditation. Every moment is long. Every breath is gentle. Every thought is unhurried. This lonely orbit is not empty. It is spacious. It is not abandoned. It is peaceful. It is not cold. It is calm. The sun rises slowly. It sets slowly. It circles the sky, not as a blazing fire, but as a distant light that keeps time in soft rhythms. Saturn drifts through its long year like a ship, gliding across a quiet sea. And as you move with it, you feel the truth of this world's message. Time moves differently here. Slower, deeper, more patient than anywhere closer to the Sunday. A single season becomes a chapter of life. A single moment stretches into a memory that lasts decades. Even the storms follow this slow rhythm. The great white spot appears only once every Saturnian year, once every 29 Earth years. A storm that blooms like a flower only at the turn of a cosmic season. And then it fades again into the calm. Everything on Saturn lives by these long cycles. Everything moves with dignity and unhurried grace. The planet's path is lonely, yes, so far from the sun that warmth feels symbolic rather than physical. But there is a comfort in that loneliness, a quiet ease, a spaciousness that feels like a gift. You realize as you drift through this orbit that loneliness can also be peaceful. Distance can also be gentle, and cold can also be soft. When viewed from a place of calm, the loneliness of Saturn's orbit is not emptiness, it is stillness. Stillness on a planetary scale, stillness that extends across millions of miles, stillness that has lasted for billions of years. And now, in this moment, you share in it. You drift with Saturn through the faint glow of its twilight light. You drift past its rings, which shine like frozen breaths held in place by gravity's patient hand. You drift along its path, moving through a region where nothing interrupts the quiet. Time stretches around you. It becomes fluid. It becomes soft. And as you float with the planet through this great, lonely arc, a gentle truth settles over you like warm dust. You do not need to move fast to make a journey. You do not need to hurry to feel meaning. You do not need the brightness of the inner worlds to feel the beauty of existence. Sometimes, being far away lets you see more clearly. Sometimes, moving slowly lets you experience more deeply. Sometimes, loneliness is simply the space where peace can breathe. Saturn's orbit is a place where the universe exhales, where silence becomes sacred, where time becomes soft. And here, in this distant, quiet path, you feel yourself exhaling too, letting go, slowing down, sinking into calm. Because in this place, in the lonely orbit of Saturn, time truly does move differently. Slower, deeper, and more peacefully than anywhere you have been before. In the quiet outskirts of the solar system, far beyond the noisy warmth of the inner worlds, there drifts a giant, unlike any other. A giant that does not roar, a giant that does not blaze, a giant that speaks not in storms, or eruptions, or violent displays of power, but in softness. Saturn is often described as majestic, as magnificent, as awe-inspiring. Yet none of these words capture its true essence, because Saturn's beauty is not the beauty of drama, not the beauty of force, not the beauty of spectacle. Saturn's beauty is quiet. It is the kind of beauty that settles into your chest like a warm breath, the kind of beauty that rests gently on the surface of your thoughts, the kind of beauty that invites you to slow down, to breathe deeper, to notice the stillness between heartbeats. When you look at Saturn, you are not overwhelmed. You are calmed. Its golden clouds do not shout. They glow. Soft bands of cream and honey drift around the planet, like layers of brushed silk, stretched and smoothed by the slow hand of time. The rings do not sparkle like gemstones. They shimmer like frost in dawn's first light. Cold, quiet, fragile, and impossibly thin. Even the light of the sun, weakened by its billion-mile journey, touches Saturn gently. It settles over the planet, like pale warm dust, falling into its curves with delicate softness. Saturn does not command attention. It earns it, the way a soft song does, slowly, quietly, deeply. When you drift near the rings, passing through waves of particles, no larger than grains of ice, you begin to understand that this giant is not defined by its size. It is defined by its calm. A calm so vast, it becomes a presence. A calm so deep, it feels like a kind of gravity of its own. As you glide through its gentle light, you begin to sense a kind of poetry written across Saturn's form. A poetry not made of words, but of motion and silence and time. A poetry carved into a planet that has been turning in slow rhythm for billions of years. Perhaps the best way to understand Saturn is to imagine it, not as a world, but as a poem that the universe wrote about quietness. A poem of drifting clouds, a poem of frozen halos, a poem of slow storms and patient seasons, a poem of light and shadow, of dust-colored skies and glimmering arcs of icy breath. Every detail of Saturn feels intentional, not in a way that implies design, but in a way that implies balance. The rings are impossibly thin and yet impossibly wide. The bands of clouds move with relentless power and yet appear as soft as cotton. The storms spin with fierce winds and yet look like brushstrokes of pale gold. Even the giant itself, with its enormous mass and towering size, feels weightless because it is made of gas, of movement, of air. Everything on Saturn is in motion, constant, eternal, effortless, and yet everything feels still. This is the paradox. At the heart of Saturn's poetry, a planet in constant motion that somehow creates calm, a giant of storms that somehow radiates peace, a world of tremendous size that somehow feels light enough to float. As you drift closer to the planet's glowing bands, you see the clouds sliding past each other in wide, sweeping lanes. Cream, ivory, amber, the colors flow together. Like a soft, endless river, bands blend and soften until each one becomes indistinguishable from the next. There is no harsh line, no sudden change, only gradients. Saturn is a world built from gradients, gradients of color, gradients of temperature, gradients of pressure and depth, layered in quiet succession. From the glowing atmosphere down into the unseen body of the giant, every layer is a verse in a poem written by stillness, And if you listen closely, if you let yourself drift, inside the silence of Saturn's orbit, you begin to hear a rhythm, not an audible sound, not a vibration, but a feeling that sits behind your breathing, a feeling that spreads slowly through your chest and settles deep within you. The feeling that time here has a different texture, not rushed, not hurried, not pulled forward by urgency or momentum. Time here feels like a long, steady tide, a tide that rises slowly and falls slowly and never disturbs the calm surface of the mind. Everything that happens on Saturn happens slowly. The seasons, the storms, the shifting tilt of the rings, the faint touch of sunlight across the clouds. Even the passage of day and night feels gentler because the light is dim and the shadows are soft. Saturn is a world that invites you to feel time in a deeper way. It shows you that speed is not the measure of life. That motion does not need noise. That existence does not need spectacle. Sometimes, to be beautiful, a thing only needs to be quiet. Saturn embodies that truth. If Jupiter is the thunder, Saturn is the hush after the storm. If Mars is the lonely desert, Saturn is the candlelight you carry into the night. If Earth is the vibrant melody, Saturn is the soft harmony beneath it. Everything about the planet is gentle, even the power that shapes it. The winds may be faster than hurricanes. The storms may stretch farther than continents. The pressure may be crushing. The depth may be impossible. But the appearance remains soft, always soft. Saturn hides its strength behind a veil of golden calmness. This is part of its poetry, the idea that great power does not always need to be loud. Sometimes, the most powerful things are the quietest. On Saturn, even the shadows feel poetic. They stretch across the rings in long, thin patterns that drift with the planet's rotation. Lines of darkness gliding slowly across a halo of ice. These shadows do not distort the rings. They paint them. They trace them. They give them depth, a soft geometry that moves through time. Sometimes, the rings cast shadows onto the planet, thin, faint cuts of cold darkness across the creamy clouds. Other times, the planet casts its shadow onto the rings, a wide arc of night spreading across ice that glimmers at the edges with fading sunlight. Light and darkness dance around the giant in cycles so slow you can feel them. In your breathing, you see the glow of rings fading into Saturn's night side. You see the sunrise creep slowly. Across the atmosphere, you see the faint illumination of far-off moons as they cross the rings, like fireflies moving through fog. None of these sights demand attention. They invite it, softly, gently, patiently. As you drift along the rings, you begin to sense something else, a deeper part of Saturn's poetry. It is not just a quiet beauty, it is a quiet truth. A truth about scale, about stillness, about humility. Saturn is enormous, and yet it shows no arrogance. It simply exists. In the space where it resides, moving through its long orbit, with the pace of a world that has no need to hurry, you feel the calmness in every part of it. In the rings that drift without friction, in the clouds that flow without break, in the storms that spin without rage, in the silence that stretches between moons, in the softness that wraps the world like a blanket of golden breath. And through that calmness, you feel something inside you begin to soften too. Your thoughts quiet, your shoulders loosen, your breath becomes smooth. Saturn does not speak, but it teaches. It teaches patience. It teaches softness. It teaches the beauty of slow motion. It teaches the value of quiet presence. If Saturn were a poem, its theme would be serenity. Its message would be peace. Its voice would be deep, low, steady, like the sound of a distant tide, rolling against a calm shore. You begin to understand why, when spacecraft first approached Saturn and sent images back to Earth, scientists felt something that was not scientific at all. They felt awe, yes, but also warmth, comfort, a sense of being held by something vast and gentle. Even machines that measure data cannot escape the feeling of Saturn. It is that powerful and that soft. The quiet giant, the gentle titan, the planet that floats in its own poetry. As you drift farther out, looking back at Saturn from the dim edge of its halo of rings, you see the entire world framed in pale light. The golden sphere glows softly. The rings sweep outward in graceful arcs. The darkness around it makes everything brighter. In contrast, for a moment, you feel as though you are looking at the most peaceful sight the solar system has to offer. And perhaps you are, because Saturn, unlike any other world, reminds you of something you may have forgotten. Silence can be beautiful. Stillness can be powerful. Gentleness can be vast. You breathe in, slow, deep, warm. You breathe out, soft, calm, unhurried. And Saturn remains in your vision, quiet, glowing, wrapped in its delicate halo, a giant that whispers, a world that drifts, a poem written in gold and ice and time. You feel the truth settled gently into you. Saturn is not just a planet, it is the universe's reminder that even the largest things can be soft, that even the coldest things can be comforting, that even the quietest things can speak deeply. The quiet giant's poetry is not written in sound. It is written in stillness. And as you leave Saturn behind you now, continuing your journey through its realm, you carry that poetry with you, a soft echo of a gentle world that will continue drifting in the dark. Long after this moment ends, there are places in the universe where motion is constant, where chaos rules, where stars collide, where galaxies swirl like tidal storms made of light. There are places of fire, places of collapse, places of violent birth and explosive endings. But here, in the distant quiet of Saturn's realm, the universe feels different, softer, calmer, gentler. It feels like this is the place where the cosmos comes to breathe out, a place where everything, light, time, motion, thought, slows down into something peaceful. After watching the storms of Saturn, the drifting rings, the sleeping moons, the golden haze of Titan, and the frozen breath of Enceladus, you begin to feel a subtle truth forming around you. The universe is not only expansion and violence and creation through chaos. The universe also rests, and Saturn is where you can feel it. As you drift through the dark near Saturn's orbit, a stillness settles over you, a stillness so deep that even your thoughts begin to move more slowly. The rings slide beneath you in their endless, graceful arcs. The giant planet turns with unhurried rotation. Moons drift like lanterns in a sea of shadow. Everything around you moves, but softly. Everything here exists, but without urgency. This is the resting heartbeat of the solar system. The light from the distant sun is faint, but warm in its own way. It falls on Saturn like a soft blanket, wrapping it in diffuse gold and muted amber. The shadows it casts are long and slow, as if even darkness has chosen to take its time here. No part of Saturn's realm moves quickly. Not the storms, not the seasons, not the drifting moons. Everything feels suspended in a calm that stretches for millions of miles. As you watch Saturn turn, you begin to sense that time bends around the planet, not literally, but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It stretches, softens, loses its sharpness. Moments feel larger, breaths feel longer, thoughts feel quieter. This is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of presence, the silence of something ancient and peaceful and infinitely patient. You drift farther, and the rings curve beneath you. Like a frozen river of light, they move with the elegance of dancers who have rehearsed their steps for billions of years. Each particle, each grain of ice, each drifting crystal knows exactly where to be, exactly how to move. Gravity guides them in slow, subtle swirls, a choreography that never falters. When you glide above the rings, you see shadows stretching in thin, gentle lines, pale etchings that move. As the sun moves, as Saturn moves, as you move, nothing is still, yet everything feels restful. This is the essence of Saturn's poetry, a world of constant motion that somehow creates peace. It becomes clear, as you drift along these frozen arcs, that the universe has many voices, some loud, some bright, some fierce, and some, only some, soft enough to lull you into a deeper kind of awareness. Saturn speaks in that soft voice. It speaks in the glow of its rings, in the calm of its clouds, in the gentle drift of its moons. It speaks in rhythms, older than Earth, older than oceans, older than the first whisper of life on your distant home. And its message is simple: rest. Not because the journey is over, not because you must stop, but because the universe allows room for stillness. As you float near the cloud tops, the colors unfold in slow motion. soft cream, gentle gold, warm amber, quiet ivory. The bands drift in calm layers, each one sliding past the next, with no sharp edges, no hard breaks, only blending tones and smooth transitions. You imagine reaching down and touching the topmost clouds, but they would part beneath your hand like warm breath. Nothing here is solid. Everything is movement, yet the overall feeling is calm. Even the deeper layers, the metallic hydrogen, the swells of internal heat, move in slow, steady tides that ripple upward to shape the clouds. Powerful, yes, but softened by distance and depth and age. You float higher again and look outward toward the orbiting moons. So many small worlds, moving in the same gentle cadence as their parent planet. Mimas, bright and cratered. Rhea, soft and ancient. Dione, quiet and cracked. Tethys, smooth and pale. Titan, glowing in its golden fog. And Enceladus, breathing its soft fountains into the dark. Each moon drifts with a kind of silent loyalty, circling Saturn as if drawn not only by gravity, but by affection. This entire system feels alive. With stillness, you drift farther still until the whole of Saturn fits into your view, ringed, glowing, framed in a soft halo of reflected light. The sight is both small and enormous, both intimate and cosmic. It is like looking at a candle floating in a vast night, a gentle flame surrounded by infinite dark, and you realize, in a quiet moment that feels almost sacred, that Saturn is not just a planet. In the physical sense, it is a feeling of settling, a feeling of being held, a feeling of drifting, and not needing to fight the drift, a feeling of the universe, taking a deep breath and exhaling slowly. You feel yourself mirror that breath without trying. Inhale, slowly. Exhale, softly. The rhythm aligns. Your breath and Saturn's motion become one. You close your eyes for just a moment, and in the darkness behind your eyelids, you see the glimmer of the rings, the slow drift of clouds, the quiet arcs of moons. In their timeless orbits, the universe, which so often feels chaotic and overwhelming, now feels peaceful. You are reminded that the cosmos is not only vast, it is balanced, not only ancient, but calm, not only powerful, but gentle. And Saturn embodies that balance. It reveals the quiet face of creation, a face made of patience, a face made of long cycles and soft motion, a face made of deep, endless calm. As you float in the dark, you can almost imagine that if the universe were to fall asleep, it would choose this place. The soft glow of Saturn, the gentle shimmer of its rings, to rest beneath. A cosmic cradle, a quiet harbor, a place where motion becomes meditation. And in this stillness, you feel a presence that is not sentient, but familiar. The universe resting. Through Saturn, you drift through that feeling. You let it settle in you. You let it soften you. Everything inside you, the tension, the speed, the noise of thought, loosens. And as you watch Saturn shrink, just a little, in your field of view, you whisper a thought that feels like it belongs to this world. The universe rests here, not always, not everywhere, but here, in this orbit, in this stillness, in this glow, and now, so do you. As your journey through Saturn's quiet realm comes gently to an end, you float once more along the edge of its shimmering halo. The rings glow softly beneath you, pale arcs of frozen light, moving with an elegance that feels almost timeless. The giant world below turns in its slow, steady rhythm, a rhythm older than memory, older than life, older than sleep itself. You breathe in, deep and slow, and the calm of this distant place settles into your chest, warm, steady, heavy with peace. You breathe out, softly, and let the last traces of the day sink away like drifting dust. Here, beneath the frozen halo of Saturn, nothing rushes, nothing demands, nothing pulls you forward or pushes you back. There is only stillness, only soft light, only the quiet presence of a giant who has spent billions of years moving gently through the dark. Let that stillness become yours. Let the rings circle your thoughts like a soft embrace. Let the slow turning of Saturn's golden clouds carry your mind into deeper rest. Tonight, you are not on Earth. You are drifting in the calm shadow of a sleeping Titan. You are wrapped in the soft glow of rings made from ancient ice. You are held by the silence of a world that has never known noise. Here, you can release everything, every weight, every worry, every motion that kept your mind awake. Here, you can rest. So let yourself drift. Let your breath soften. Let your thoughts fade like distant starlight. And as you sink into the quiet of sleep, carry with you the memory of this gentle world. Its calm oceans of cloud, its whispering rings, its patient orbit through the endless night. Rest now, beneath the rings of Saturn. Rest deeply, rest peacefully, and let this quiet giant watch over your dreams. Until morning, good night, and may your thoughts drift softly through the universe.